Good.
We are all here.
Well, welcome all. So, why don't you run the meeting, Alana?
Sure. All right. So yeah, we had a few people that were unable to join us, and sometimes we have one or two people that pop on online in the middle of the meeting just to make things fun. But welcome to Susan and Zena, as you guys are new. Just to give you an idea kind of how this goes, usually the first 10 or 15 minutes, everyone's getting here. We're all like extra on time today, so that's awesome. And you're welcome to eat during the meeting. There's some drinks over there. Grab your coffee or whatever you need. And what we're gonna do is go around, talk about what kind of business we have. Then we'll talk about books for a while. And at the end, we'll do announcements of any events that are going on that everyone should know about. So that's kind of the general how it all goes. Doug will chime in and as needed. But yeah, it's a comfortable discussion. I'm excited to hear what everybody has book-wise interests going on. And before we get into the books, if you want to say your name, what kind of business you have, and maybe just one of your favorite books. Doesn't have to be the best, so no pressure there. But Doug, would you like to start?
Sure, I'll be happy to start. I'm Doug Wilder, Wilder Business Success. Been coaching now for 31 years, and mostly I coach CEOs that want to retire or pass the baton on to the next generation, train the new generation, the next generation to take over the business. So that's sort of what I've been working on mostly. As far as a book that I'm reading right now is called The Goal, because one of my clients is a manufacturing company with about 72 employees, and that's the book that they're doing in their book club. So I'm reading it, and it's a fascinating book because it talks about how to look at establishing goals from a different standpoint, particularly in a manufacturing company, works extremely well, and how to look for the bottlenecks. That's, when you find the bottlenecks, that's where the real success comes from in achieving any goal. So, how about that?
Very nice. Very nice. All right.
I am Heidi Aderman. Heidzelin Coaching is my company, and I work with music industry professionals to build habits around resilience so they can build prosperous music businesses. And favorite book? Okay, so this idea is just inspired because on Netflix, the Anne Rice stuff has come out. So Mayfair Witches, that whole series, and then the vampire series, the Interview with the Vampire, and all those.
Okay.
So good.
You like those, yeah.
I do.
Good.
Oh,
Yeah.
That was quick. I was waiting for more. I'm Zena Exelis. I have my business is called State of Mind Business Consultants. It's a DBA of my law firm. The law offices of Zena Salam. I'm an attorney. I've been an attorney going on over 20 years now, but my business for the last 5 years has just been focused on business consulting and coaching. So I've now coached over 400 law firms, and I also don't just do law firms. I also have a few medical providers and a few CPAs. I do fractional CEO, COO, and CFO services. So I have a background. My background's a little different. I'm actually going through an executive CFO program right now at the University of Miami Herbert Business School, and I have some certifications in COO as well through the business school. So it is a little bit of a unique experience that I've been doing, but, I'm really, this is my niche, this is my passion. I like doing it under my law firm because it gives that confidentiality, attorney-client confidentiality, and it allows me to also give them, legal advice as well from a risk management standpoint. So that's me in a nutshell. I work really closely with my companies. The reason I was able to coach 400 is because I worked for a much bigger company where they gave me 110 clients at once, but then over the last now going on 3 years, I limit my companies to no more than 20. So I'm able to do more hands-on services, more weekly. Some of them even have me up on their website. So I'm just, I like to keep it to really small, more hands-on, less fractional, more C-suite, which is what I really like to do because I feel like it has more of an impact. I just came back from a week-long office visits to a few of my companies. So it's exhausting, but I love that because now I get to go and actually speak one-on-one with their staff as well and really get to know what's going on internally, which I was never able to do when I was working for the bigger corporation.
Where are these companies located?
The ones I visited last
Yeah.
week. So if I'm a little tired today, that's why, because they're really long days. That's also why I'm a little hoarse. 2 of them were in Atlanta. One was a big medical provider. She has a big OBGYN office in Atlanta,
Mhm.
and the other one was actually in Atlanta as well. Now, the medical provider, she has over 20 employees. Obviously, I can't do one-on-one meetings with all of them, but we did like smaller group meetings with them.
Mhm.
The nice thing about meeting with them one-on-one with me is I am an independent contractor with them, right? So, and I do have that confidentiality, so they feel really able to be open with me. And so I get to hear things that the owners and some of the managerial higher managers have never knew, so there's that disconnect. So
Yeah.
every time I go and visit the office, it's always really eye-opening, especially for me and for the managers. They always feel like, because I meet with the managers and the owners weekly, right? But they always like, oh, I know my staff. We have an open door policy, and then I get there and it's a completely different conversation. And so they're always like, they seem kind of blindsided a lot of times, but it's an important one to have because they don't necessarily know how it's really running on the ground, right?
Do you have 20 clients or clients that have about 20 people? Sorry, I was trying to understand.
No, I don't take more than 20. So right now I'm probably at like, I don't know, 17-ish.
And they can have whatever size.
Whatever
Okay,
size,
just
whatever
making sure.
size, yeah.
Okay.
I have a client that's just literally just opening their doors and they have like basically very little revenue come in. And I have a client that's over 10 million, right, in gross revenue. So it just depends on that. But I don't take any more than 20 because I can't offer them, that, I just don't have that.
Yeah.
capacity to just want those. So my other client was also in Atlanta, and then I flew to Oklahoma. So they're all over. They're
Mhm.
all over the place. I even have a client in Canada. I have, actually, it's kind of funny because I don't have any clients around here. It's really, well, I have in Florida, but they're in Miami
Yeah.
area. So that's I just thought of that. That's a little different.
Mhm.
As far as with the book I'm reading, right now I'm reading the Complete Conversations with God, which I'm really loving. One of my favorite books though is The Power of TED. If you guys haven't read it by David Emerald, I think is his name.
Don't remember.
Oh, I can't believe it.
So it's an allegory, right? And I think it's not TED like TED Talk.
Yeah, don't tell him. It's not TED like TED Talk.
Or Ted Lasso.
It's
No.
not Ted Lasso, no.
Different.
Different Ted. Mhm.
But, I can't believe I forgot his,
We've been going around and introducing ourselves and saying where we work, what a book that we like. So Doug introduced himself. He's a business coach here, and then Heidi also, has Heidelin coaching. And so we're just kind of going around just to let you know where we're at.
Roger that, got it.
I think his name is David O'Mole, but anyway, if you guys haven't read it, it's a really small book, it's only like 100 pages. I probably listened or read it for, I don't know, probably 10, 15 times. It really introduces the dreaded drama triangle and the empowerment dynamic. I would highly recommend it. It's a mindset. I'm all about mindset, obviously, and your place in being able to control your own life and being the creator of your own life. So I would highly recommend it. As far as the book, I am writing a book, but it's more of a personal book on
Okay.
resilience and persevering. It's called Out of the Rubble. I was born in Beirut, Lebanon, in a war-torn country, and just it's kind of like my kind of personal story of how getting from there to here and all the kind of stuff I've had to endure and it
That'll
just
eventually be our favorite book, so.
if I can get it completed, because
Yeah.
it's been a very, it's more of a, if I can get through it, more of a personal kind of, I don't know what you call it, cathartic,
Yeah.
book.
Yeah, because it's expressing the
Yeah.
thoughts and feelings that you've had for all these years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's been a
Good.
very hard
Good,
kind of book to write, but
yeah. We'll get into a lot of, I'm gonna get really into how we're writing our books. Yeah, that'll be interesting to hear.
let me cry.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
We got some napkins here.
I don't know any of you, I may start being vulnerable, but yes, so that's me.
Okay,
Took a lot of time, sorry.
good.
Oh, it's really good.
Kent?
Want me to go next?
Yeah, never do Sal. actually.
Sure. My name is Smith Irwin. My coaching practice is primarily with entrepreneurs, but I touch on the life and the financial perspective of coaching. But so the core work that I do is working with the stuck entrepreneur, the stuck business that they've grown organically, and they don't know how to scale, and they've got this mess on their hands, and they're trying to get to the next level. You know, they're kind of that second and third stage of the growth. So the approach is I want help them capture a vision of creating the life in the business that they love and that excites them every day, versus where they are now, which is usually not the case with a lot of business owners. So my background was in the financial planning industry for decades. I have designations and all that kind of stuff, and then I own my own small fintech company, and we grew it, sold it, and I've also worked for a church for over a decade where I was involved in coaching and counseling and marriage and, you know, the whole mess of everything that you could imagine. So I developed a lot of mindset and faith issues that I incorporate in what I do. So yeah, that's my story and kind of my background.
It's a good one.
Do you have a favorite book?
A favorite book is kind of a series of books. 10X is easier than 2X. We'll pull you into the book, The Gap in the Game. And then we'll open you up to some of the other ones, but I've been re-listening to those two. I've probably re-listened to them 4 or 5 times when I do my morning walk. They're just so rich.
I've read them actually.
Yeah. And presently reading, have a book of, probably all the books on my desk, but right now I'm reading We Who Wrestle with God. And so that's kind of challenging in a lot of ways, but so that's kind of what I'm reading right now.
Good.
Cool.
Want to jump to Sal?
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Am I?
No?
Oh, wait, let me, hold on, my sound isn't working. I knew it all along. I think what I can do, this is not working, so. Let me,
Technical difficulties.
just one sec. All right, let's see. Nope. Not that. Just. Okay. Okay, you told me how to do that before.
Oh. For you.
Okay, whoops, let me just. Okay, she's messaging and I will see what she's saying in just a sec. It's echoey. Check the caret next to the little microphone on the left. It's microphone?
Yeah.
Yeah, so speakers. So I think we have it. I think it's working now.
Okay. Can you say something, Sal?
Sure, can you hear me?
Yes, yes. We'll turn
Oh,
it.
am I big on the screen?
You are
Yes.
big on the screen.
Like a jumbotron, like huge?
Yeah, yeah, I mean,
Am I like looming?
whole stadium is watching you.
Oh, it's a joy to be here. Doug and I had a lovely conversation last week about my soon-to-be launched consulting practice. My name is Susan Adams Lloyd. People call me Sal sometimes because Susan Adams Lloyd is a mouthful, or as one of my former employees told me one time, it sounds like somebody falling down the stairs, Susan Adams Lloyd, right? So Sal is a lot friendlier and is my handle, kind of my brand. But I am CEO at Better Business Bureau serving Minnesota and North Dakota, and Better Business Bureau is the largest professional association in the upper Midwest here. There are 94 BBBs across North America, and I'm one of the CEOs, but I will be leaving my position at the end of June, and I'm going to move to the greater Boston area where my husband and I have recently bought a farm. And my husband is fully retired. Our children moved out there, and if I could do my job here and live out there, it would be a perfect match because we have 7,000 businesses here in this BBB that we consult and serve, and especially in the areas of customer service. And I have a great deal of passion for the work that we do in helping businesses be better. And I'd like to continue in a capacity, I guess, in consulting, not only just in customer service, but I'm particularly smitten by several aspects of business, including strategic planning and especially execution. I think a couple of you kind of touched on that, helping people move along towards excellence, but not just in a ill-defined or gosh, we're working hard kind of way, but in a very strategic progression. So the name of my firm will be Good, Better, Best, and it is soon to be launched with an LLC. In fact, I'm meeting this afternoon with an attorney to move forward on that. So as I embarked on my consulting practice, I look to groups like this and share. You mentioned fractional CEO work, and that sounds interesting to me too. So to be continued. I would share with you a great book. I would say my favorite book is always the book that I'm currently reading, and I just finished one. If I could share the screen, I'll show you the book. Yeah, it's I heard this author speak. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Is Your Work Worth It by Christopher Wong Michelson. And he co-wrote it with this other professor. They're both PhDs, and they were working together on some academic stuff. And it's really coming out of the pandemic, looking at how people look at their work and how they define it. But I would say it's a wonderful introspection, especially if you're working with clients, relative to passion and joy and aligning one's personal mission with their business mission. And I found it particularly, like somebody mentioned, cathartic. I just really enjoyed it. And so if you're working with clients who are kind of lost in the mix, it might be a great inspiration for them. So really, really enjoyed it. Let me get back to, did I unshare the screen now, or are you
Not yet.
not? Oh,
I think if you downside, oh, there you go.
there we go. So yes, and I have been working on a book as well. I had the most amazing journey starting in 2015. I decided to get a brain transplant, meaning a whole new outlook on life. So at 56 years old, I went back to school and got a master's degree at Harvard. So for 3.5 years, I immersed myself with a bunch of millennials. I learned to speak fluent millennial and came out with an experience with a whole new outlook on life. And during that time, I was looking at particularly leadership relative to the question that I asked myself is, after all these years of meandering through the labyrinth of my career, why was I able to have a modicum of success while other people didn't? And especially for women of my generation, where there weren't many women or people of color at the top of business organizations, why do some people make it and some people don't in that labyrinth of success? So the name of my book is Pathways to Success. I have 10 years of research and I have interviewed 172 executives and asked them to look retrospectively at their career. And through that process, looked at not only gender and race in terms of, are there different journeys for women and men, people of color? You hear about the glass ceiling forever. Why do some people emerge as leaders and others don't? And the basis of my research suggests that most leaders are similar in their path to success, and there's certain attributes that one can incorporate. So if you were to create a prescription and hand it off to somebody as you're mentoring along, there's certain precursors to leading effectively, and it doesn't necessarily matter, at least in my research outcome, the industries or the sectors that you're in. But in fact, aligning those with the direction that you're going. So just blind ambition and trying to lead is not necessarily a pathway to success, but arming yourself really early in your career or at certain forks of the road of certain things that you can align. So I'll be very eager to share that with you. I am just at the very beginning of the actual storytelling, but my research is pretty solid and I'm excited about that. And just lastly, so I don't keep blabbing, my father used to have, when my father was living, he founded a publishing company back in the days where royalty publishing was the only way to get published. So you'd take your manuscript and you'd send it around town and you get yourself an agent. And by the time you were published in your first book, you actually became less than minimum wage employee to big marketing publishers and agents that scooped up all your profit. And it usually took 3 or 4, sometimes even 5 books before you were owning your own content and had a say in how it was marketed and executed. And my dad was early in the independent authors and self-publishing back when self-publishing had a little bit of a negative connotation. The name of his publishing firm was Beaver's Pond Press. My dad's name was Beaver Adams. And he was well known in the publishing circles because he was a disruptor in that regard. So for all of you that are thinking about books, the one thing I can tell you, I don't know if my book will be any more successful just because I've had that experience, but don't give away content to anybody. Make sure that you own that, you own the right, you own the copy, you own the marketing, you're in control. Because once you give it away, you can't reel that back in. And the journey, maybe in retrospect, it's good for your ego, but not good for your pocketbook. But more importantly, you can open more doors with a well-written, well-published, well-edited, well-marketed book. It becomes a calling card for the rest of what you do, and it can be a really satisfying experience. So thank you for letting me share and bust in on your lovely gathering today, and I hope what I shared is helpful to you.
I love it. Good.
It is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good. Okay.
Well, I'll introduce
Okay.
myself, which I probably should have started with,
Yeah.
but I'm Alana. I work for Doug. I'm his marketing manager. And that means I work on his website, do social media, emails, and I'm trying to help him write his book. So it definitely applies. I do more writing than I do coaching. Although I have small kind of consulting clients here and there. But
Mostly around website or
yeah,
marketing.
around website marketing,
Or
and
social media, yeah.
So, yeah. And then also my favorite book right now is Moby Dick. I'm not finished it, but I love it,
That's a
and
great book.
I've listened to probably 80% of it, but I'm reading it, and I have a 4-year-old that like distracts me.
Sure.
So, but I just think it's amazing. I think it's the most incredible thing I've ever written, and I feel like if I tried to read it when I was younger, I wouldn't have liked it. But now it's just such an amazing story of exploration that it inspires me. And to be able to look at a book that's like a classic and not need, Cliff Notes open, but just, go fishing.
That's neat.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah, can anybody say the first words of the book?
Call me Ishmael.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
And with that, call you Ishmael.
That's cooler than my name.
And I'll pass it to you to introduce yourself and let us know kind of what work you do and what's your favorite book?
Sure. So my name's Dante Amadeo, so I just go by Dante. I'm a computer guru by day. I work for a company called Beeline. I've been there for about 13 years. This is hopefully the last job that I will have because I don't want to learn another BMS system. I was in the implementation space for about a decade, and now I manage implementers and other nerds like me. But aside from that, my night job was writing. So I had one novel published, sort of like in the way that Sal referenced, in that instead of giving this novel to a company and making 50 cents or a quarter on the dollar, I went with a small local company called High Pitched Hum, run by Billy Reynolds out of the beach. And so what he does is, for his stable of authors, he will say, you will pay me, we'll do a run of 3,000 books, you pay for printing, and then he makes money every time you sell one.
Mhm.
And he makes like $2. I make the rest.
Oh, really?
So so we did that run. I did the tour of Jacksonville, doing book signings at Regency Mall, if you remember this. So this is like 20 years ago. That led to a screenwriting opportunity. So someone who found my book was the wife of a local television producer, John and Susan Lawrence. They knew that my content was clever but clean. And I pitched this idea. They were looking for ideas. I had one. My screenplay was made into a NBC movie that had like 8 million viewers, of which I got nothing. It was paid for. But it allowed my wife to be a stay-at-home mom for an extra couple of years.
Nice.
So that was good. And I had the second novel ready to go, and now I'm going to reveal a little bit more about me. I had the second novel ready to go, and my youngest daughter, I have 3 daughters, she got ill, and so that was a whole journey. Around the time I actually started coming to these things, so I stalk you, but I haven't
Good.
seen you in a while. But
Yeah.
it's been probably 10 years since I've
10
been
years?
to these.
I was wondering how long it's been.
And well, she fell ill, and I just had to make a decision. What are my priorities? Husband, father, worker,
Yeah.
artist, or writer. I'm like, well, pick one, flush. Goodbye, writer. So my youngest daughter never did recover. So she passed away when she was 7. And then our marriage fell apart about a year after that. It's funny because my ex and I, we used to laugh about 3 years into the process. We'd be like, wow, do you know 75% of all marriages that, where a child passes away end in divorce? Like, ha, ha, ha. And then like a year or 2 later, we're like, yeah. And then a year after that, it's like, yeah, no, let's just, she's happily remarried. I'm happily remarried. Life goes on. And so it occurred to me, I'm like, I felt like I could do some coaching. I used to have a blog called Guy versus Man, and that's really my passion. I am chagrined by, it used to be when we're younger, you had this natural progression where a boy would grow in wisdom and stature until he became a man. But now they're stuck in this like middle area that I call the guy. It's this Game Boy playing, beer swilling, living off their girlfriends, responsibility dodging, can't afford a car losers that my daughters avoided dating, right?
Mhm.
It's not a matter of finding a man you can love, but just finding a guy who won't ruin your credit. So I got about, I feel like I'm speaking truth
That
here.
rolls right off your tongue.
Gonna get a word. So I had about, my blog had about 200,000 views, maybe 50,000 followers, but I just didn't have it in me to just keep it going. So I've let all that go. But in recent years, my other two daughters are just moved out of the house last year at the same time. There's like 4 years apart. The first one I was prepared for. I was like, wow, I didn't so much lose a daughter as I gained an office. But the second one left, and I was like, oh crap. And then it occurred to me, I'm like, well, let's go back into it. So I'm writing 2 books. One is a different sort of novel that is more fantasy related. It's not as young adult friendly as my first one, but I have no tolerance for extreme sex or violence in books. My kids, even though they're adults, are going to read it. I don't want it. I don't want it. So that's the one thing. But the other thing is condensing all of those ideas into this aspect of, what does it mean to be a man? With an emphasis on servant leadership. I'm an ex-Army officer, and I had a fateful experience with a major when I got my commission. I'm going to the chow hall because I was prior service, and I'm going in to get chow first day of bivouac. He's like, no, son. He's like, we're the leaders. We eat last. All your people eat first. Well, I learned that lesson when I was 24, and I've carried it with me ever since. And what's going to outwork me in my household? So, although I do get, I get tired, but I want to be there. My value is in my utility as far as I'm concerned. What good am I to others? And I think it's an aspect that's lost on a lot of young men. They live in service of themselves. It's a shame. The last good books that I read on the fantasy side was the Harry Dresden series, the Dresden Files. It's sort of a Columbo who's a wizard. And it's kind of noir, very, very sarcastic, which is my love language. And so I literally read all 17 of his books in like 4 months. I got it. Nonfiction, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Darn, let's say. A very deceptive title because you feel like it's like, well, just don't give a, but it's not. What it really teaches you is don't give a darn about the things that are distracting you. Figure out what you do care about, and then pour yourself into it.
Yeah.
And here I am.
Yeah.
So I want to get writing again.
You're
I
back.
am writing. I'm
You're
50
back.
pages. Yeah, I'm 50 pages into the fantasy book.
Yeah.
80 pages into the Guy versus Man book, and I still have my second Saban novel in the wings, ready to get published. Now I just need to like find someone who will take a chance on me being out of the business for 20 years. And that's it.
What was the name of your movie?
Secrets of the Mountain.
Oh.
I know, right? It's like wisely renamed from Dysfunction Junction, which was my original title. But yeah, you can find it at Walmart for the low price of $14.95. If I sign it for you, it's worth $14.95. But it was yeah, it was good. It was a good experience. A little soul crushing when you give away the rights, like the rewrites for the movie like my screenplay makes people cry, and then they rewrote it and watered it down, and they're like, well, this is the rewriting process. I'm like, really? Because it kind of sucks. So that was the other thing that burned me out of writing. It's like I don't want to give up control. I want to, like, God forbid I should write a screenplay and then they took my age appropriate love interest and made him a boy toy. And I'm like, that's not what I wanted this person to do. She's ready for a mature relationship and she goes for the eye candy. But,
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate it in real life. However, that's not what I wanted to use character.
Yeah. That's what Sal was talking about.
Exactly so. Exactly. No, what Sal said completely resonated with me from a control standpoint and a monetary standpoint. So now I just have to figure out what kind of coaching can I really do? At first I was like, I've been divorced and all that, but I thought, my coaching may come from a place of you get knocked down. Everyone doesn't lead. The path to success may be quite circuitous, right?
Mhm,
And so I might be able to speak from authority,
mhm, right. Hmm. Fascinating. What a
Yeah.
fascinating group.
And I have a little experience self-publishing. I had a little COVID book, I guess. I'm sure there's others of us out there. Well, I wrote a memoir when I was 20, and so I worked on that and added to it, and then I published it on Amazon. So I got that experience, didn't really sell many, but it was, and didn't spend a lot of time editing or marketing. But I got to see what it was like, and I realized that writing a full-length book is an extraordinary accomplishment. I have a couple other books started, and I like writing both fiction and nonfiction.
Mhm.
So, but some of it's kind of like that teen or college kind of chick flick kind of story. So that's what I have going on for fun. But some of us have already answered this, but my first question was, what is your book about? What is your book that either you're writing or you want to write? And what made you want to write it? So, and again, you can just sort of answer whoever, yeah,
Mhm.
what made you want to write it is kind of the question I wanted to start with.
I'll jump right in. My book, the working title is Wilder De-Stress Tools. And so it's how do you do a mind shift and decide to be happy and not stressed out. And so it's something that that I've had to perfect over the years. And and stress almost ended my marriage 25 years ago plus, and then ended up living with and being married to my wife for 53 years. So I had this mind shift, and it worked extremely well in my life. So I was going to pass this on to others, and I've already passed it on to so many clients of mine. One client calls me the calm coach. So these are the concepts that I'm passing on in this book. I've been writing it now 4 years. 3 years ago, I said, okay, I'm going to get it done this year. And by the end of the year, well, it was December 30th. And I thought, oh, shucks. And so I just blasted it away, came in, and Chad, the guy who took our picture earlier, he said, so how's your book? And I said, well, I got 18 pages. And he said, that's not a book, that's a pamphlet. And so ever since I've been working on this book, it is now up to 36 pages. And the way it's been working is, well, for me, is Alana will interview me and then she'll write it out. And so that's really streamlined it because I can talk much faster than I can write.
Mhm.
And when I write, I'm worried about the commas and the semicolons and where do you put a comma? Where she doesn't worry about that, she just does it and does it right. So,
Well, and he has a really interesting combination for his stories that are strategies for de-stressing, very practical ones, combined with stories of working with different kinds of people, either and he has a lot of anecdotes now of like, somebody whose marriage was difficult because he was bringing the stress of his chiropractic work home, or somebody, a new CEO who was promoted and getting mad at everybody, and like, but the more we talk through it, it becomes like an engaging story, not just like a blog online.
Yeah.
Faceless person, so,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm enjoying the process. And really want to get it done this year. No, I mean it. And it's so it's very exciting. if I have the book, I don't expect to make $1 million on the book, but I would expect that. That when I have a client, particularly one that is feeling stressed, I can give them the book. I go over these process and then I give them the book and it'll solidify it for them. So that's sort of the concept. Or if I go on the speaking tour, then I
If-
can,
When?
well.
Why would you not do speaking tour?
Okay, yeah, right, okay, thank you.
Just checking.
Yeah, just checking, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so because I like to speak, anytime I have a microphone, I'm good, and even though my words never come out fluidly, like yours do. Yeah, mine just, I mumble and bumble all over, I can't even finish a sentence, and then I'm demonstrating. So it's, so, but I, so that's where I'm seeing this whole coaching, book writing, speaking thing coming together. And that's me.
Cool.
In a book cover.
Awesome.
So, I was trying to come up with a big Christmas present for my parents this year. My dad's retired and he pretty much golfs, but he lives in Wisconsin, so that means like for 4 months he golfs, and then I'm really not sure what he does the rest of his time. And then my mom is retiring at the end of this month, and she doesn't know what she's gonna do with her time. Besides that, she's gonna have neck and back surgery this year. So I was trying to think of something that they could do.
Mm.
And so I put together like my own version of one of those books you could get that's like, Mom, tell me your story, or Dad, tell me your story, right? So I put together something like that. I was like, wouldn't it be fun if we all told our story? So I made us like 3 folders in Google Drive, and we all have like the same writing prompts, like that follow kind of like along our lives for us to like share stories. And then I was like, well, and then if we were all there for that particular situation, wouldn't it be fun if we all kind of chimed in on the story and we just write the story of the Adermans?
Wow.
And so my dad thinks it's pretty cool. My mom wasn't quite so sure, but I think as soon as she works out of her brain, she'll be a little bit more on board. And so we are slowly picking away at this so that we can have our own story.
Do you have one question at a time that all 3 of you are answering?
Mhm.
Interesting.
That's a neat way of doing it.
Yeah.
Can you loan those to me?
Yeah.
I'd like to see my family do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I like it. Okay, well thought through.
So for me, and I kind of touched on this before, I've had a very difficult and unusual upbringing. I was born in Beirut, Lebanon at the height of the civil war there, and I saw a lot of things at an early age I probably should not have.
Mhm.
And I may get emotional,
Mhm.
so pre-warn you.
Mhm.
So So for me, this book, Out of the Rubble, is about, adversity and perseverance and just all the things we had to go through to come to America, and then also the amount of pressure it also put on our family. And it's really, we had a pretty solid family foundation there in Lebanon. I had uncles that were prime ministers, and on my mom's side, we had, very long heritage of really established family structure there on both sides of my family. Heritage and all that, and come here and we had like nothing.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it really affected a lot of us. And to the point where I feel like now, at my age now, that I'm basically starting over with no family foundation.
Mhm.
I'm not close to any of my family now, including my parents and my sisters. So it's kind of like I'm now starting over with my and this is I think in large part due to what the war and stress and all of that had done to us. I don't know any of my cousins, even though my dad's one of 10, my mom's
Yeah.
one of 4, and we have a very long line of, you know,
Mhm.
and had we
Yeah.
stayed there and been able to stay there, I probably would have been a very different story
Right,
and different families structure.
yeah.
So I'm just kind of on my own here, I feel, and just starting over. So that's really what led the fire in me to continue to persevere and to be determined and just kind of, kind of really literally start
Mhm.
from scratch, not knowing anybody. When I came here, I didn't know English. My parents were not around for really, for the most part. And they had their own issues, so I had to teach myself English, and I had to, at a very young age, I was put, and I think I told you this, that, in a very remedial, group, because at that time, they didn't have English as second language, and even if they did, it was Arabic, no one spoke Arabic, so I was.
They didn't think you were smart,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, they couldn't communicate.
right?
They didn't know what to do with me, so they just stuck me with the, with those that had, mental, and physical
Mhm.
children. So at a very young age, I had the sense of, well, if I was going to make anything of myself, I had to kind of figure it out on my own.
Mhm.
And I did. I stayed in from recess when I was 8 years old, and I don't know. I honestly don't know where it came from, but I just taught myself English, and I just kept persevering and persevering, and this has led me to, where I am today with multiple hurdles and challenges along the way, including getting the brain infection and just a lot of stuff. And so and every time I tell my story to people, they're like, you need to write a book, because it's almost as if the reality, how they say sometimes reality is stranger than fiction.
Mhm.
And I truly feel like my story, and I'm just kind of giving you the 30,000-foot view, but when you start getting underneath the layers is kind of stranger than fiction.
Mhm.
And I hope that at the end of the day, it gives people the idea that you really can come out of anything, no matter how bad it is and how horrible you think it is. I feel like my story, at least no one here in America, very few, could possibly imagine or could possibly have as bad of a story as I did.
Mhm.
Just coming here when I was 8 and being able to turn on faucet and actually water have it come out was like mind blowing.
Yeah.
Like flipping on a switch and have electricity.
Yes.
Or just having family. I mean, there's a lot of immigrants that come here and don't have those first world kind of amenities, but at least they have a family with them,
Mhm.
or some sort of support. And I mean, I can say I had zero support, but it was, my mom was ill-equipped and my dad couldn't come with us, and it was very, very minimal support.
Mhm. Mhm.
But there, it was a whole different lifestyle. There we were like, top of society,
Mhm.
and so it was a very juxtaposed
Right.
kind of,
Do you think that through your writing, you'll be able to capture that emotion that you have?
well, what I'm doing now, the only way I'm able to actually write it is because it brings up so much emotion in me, is when I'm literally like voice to text, kind of like what you guys are doing. You're like
Mhm.
his voice.
Mhm. Mhm.
I can't just actually sit and write it
Mhm.
because it's just too much.
Too much.
So, and I have to almost be doing something else. So I have to be like driving in the car.
Mhm.
I have to be almost like be distracted or
Yeah.
something while I'm like speaking it into voice to text.
Yeah.
That's how I'm doing it now. And then
Okay.
if I go back and read it, it also that's kind of what I'm doing.
Right.
And that seems to be kind of working. So I'm not really sure how many pages I have,
Mhm.
but that's how I'm able to at least just get out like the memories that I remember
Sure.
and just kind of piecemeal. So I think I am able to capture because it is voice right now.
Yeah.
And the voice to text is obviously showing kind of that emotion.
Right. It's very exciting. Yeah, what a journey that you challenged yourself with. To get all these stories out of your head and get them onto paper, it's not an easy process.
Well, I've been journaling since I was like 14 years old.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
And I knew, so I have a lot of journals too that I can look back on.
Mm.
But I knew this was something that I needed to say, I needed to get out
Mm.
for a like relatively young age. But there's always a part of me, that's very fearful of doing that. Because a lot of it does not shine very brightly on my parents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They weren't like the greatest parent, in hindsight. So that was a lot of fear there.
Mm-hmm.
And now looking back, I do feel like they did the best they could with what they knew and had, and obviously
Sure.
they were under a lot of pressure themselves, but, seeing like, like my friends and how their parents were, it was a very different type of
Mhm.
parenting style.
Yeah.
And they were coming from a different culture too, and so, how they parented, how their parents parented. So a lot of it was also like they didn't really know, I feel. So I kept it in for a really long time
Mhm.
because of that fear. But it was always something I was nagging at me. You know how you have like this nag, and I don't know where it comes from. I don't know if it's God or I don't know where, but it's like, it just never ever left me. And I always thought like, oh, I don't know nothing about writing. English is my second language. So English is not my forte.
Uh-huh.
Even though I went to law school, which is kind of really weird. I was
The
always
nagging
more-
is good, though. Mark
Yeah.
Twain says, anyone who can be discouraged from writing should be.
Yeah. I
So
just
the
couldn't-
nagging will keep you
Well, I
going.
didn't want to. Like, this is not something I wanted to just kind of bury it. This isn't something I wanted to write. This is not something I want to really tell anybody or show it to anybody or even have anybody acknowledge it. A lot of my close friends don't know a lot of these stories. I just started talking about it to my best friend. She's like, I didn't even know.
Mhm.
And I was like, well, because it's not something I really want to talk about.
Yeah.
But I do feel like at the end of the day, I've come to the point in time in my life where I want my children to kind of know, and
Mhm.
B, it's not going away. And see, I feel like even if not a single person reads it, I think just for me to just get my story out is gonna be super duper.
Sure. For you.
cathartic.
Mhm. Wow.
So that's.
I'm looking forward to reading it.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
That'll be a good story. Exciting.
So I know that you mentioned that you do voice to text, which it sounds like partially it's a tool to separate some of the emotions, which I think is really interesting. I might want to try that, even though I feel like it's such a different exercise to speak as opposed to writing it. And there's certain things that I want to write about that I just don't because it's too painful. And I never thought, oh, well, maybe I'll try voice to text. So that's a strategy I want to try out. But speaking of that, are there writing routines that anybody has as far as setting a time goal or a place goal? And why don't we hear from Susan, because we haven't heard from you in a little bit. So anything about writing routines you would like to share?
Sure. So I think trying to find the right time where everything's aligned and you're in the mood and you're, just everything's perfect. There's no background noise. There's nothing that's interrupting you. It's really hard to find that. And I think just being around authors, again, I only worked for a year and a half for my dad's publishing firm, but my dad was immersed with authors for his entire career, and being around my dad and those people were just so full of ideas and the same kind of energy that all of you, I would prescribe, and I say this out loud to myself, is that it's almost a discipline that you have to incorporate like exercise to get past that threshold, I guess, of I'm starting a book. It should be spilling out of you at all times. And even if that committed time for thought, someone mentioned journal, writing, whatever, is all effective, just like exercising. Some days you do stairs, some days you do weight, some days you do yoga, some days you swim, if you're doing it right. So that cross-fit mindset of writing, I think, is important because the creative juice, the creative spirit is almost like a well. And when you have a breakthrough moment and it just gushes out and you're in the zone, you'll get your 300 words on your paper. You'll get something that as you rewrite it or reconvert it to maybe a typed text or something that counts as more bona fide draft, I think it starts to come. So I was always waiting for the time people would say to me, when are you going to get started on that book? And I finally feel like I'm practicing what I'm preaching right now. And that is, so this is my magic notebook for 2024. Second, this is, oh, sorry, this is 25. This is 24. I have all sorts of magic pens. They're actually just colored pens. And I place them all before me. And as you look at my notebook, you'll see, you know, different days produce different.
Different colors meaning different topics?
No,
Or
just
mood?
different spirits. They
Yeah.
just
Okay.
speak to me. It might be a black day. It might be a purple day. Today is kind of a green day. So,
The good band.
Yeah.
yeah, the band in the background. And again, I'm not trying at all to sound cavalier or cocky in any way. I'm coaching myself here actually. And that is to say my magic notebooks have produced some of the most amazing, I'll call it inspiration. I don't know where and how it comes from, but the little nuggets that create a topic, or, you know, if you start at chapter 1, Dante, I'd be curious to know about your novel. You know, did you start at 1 and go to, 15? Allowing yourself to start in the middle of what might be chapter 7 and just let it expanding from there. I have just found this amazing momentum by not having it be so structured and by manually writing rather than typing, although I think with my fingers on a keyboard better. The more creative thoughts and the nuggets from which I can expand upon are come from more of a tactical feel. And I know that's the way that, I don't know, Stephen King writes. Some of the best writers write just on legal pads and to get the juices started. And as a great source, because I reread it recently, Julia Cameron is the author, and it's a book on the creative process, not necessarily just on writing, but it speaks to me about tapping into that well of the universe that is part of you. It's called The Creative Way by Julia Cameron. So if you ever listen to, some of the greats talk about that creative process, they talk about not being responsible for their creativity, a feeling that they're more a conduit through which information flows. The famous story, the well-told story of Paul McCartney, how he wrote the song Yesterday, and he sat up at 2 a.m. and scribbled it on a notepad, and he could hear the music in his head. And the next morning he got up and he played it from beginning to end. And then he was so embarrassed because he thought, I've heard this song somewhere and I don't I don't know where I heard it, but I heard it. So he played it to John Lennon and he's like, have you ever heard this song before? And John was saying, nope, never heard it. And he finally started sharing it more widely, but he wrote it in its totality. And he talks about that was the first time that he realized that he wasn't the composer of his music, that he was really just the Sherpa of bringing that creative process from the other side of the universe into the real world. So he feels responsible for his songs. And that's why he doesn't mind singing Hey Jude for the 10,000th time, because he's not the owner of it. He's been called upon to share that creative process. And I just love the thought that maybe there's an energy for all of us. And the privilege of being creative, like we all are talking right now, is not everybody has that. And if in this new year you feel inspired just to experiment with that energy without judgment or without a must do, but just flirt with the power of that. And why I like the magic pens and the magic notebook is that if I have a session where, only a few things come out, topics, ideas, names, whatever, you can see I have 2 days that are kind of like that. That's okay, because I'm still exercising that. If I say gift, I don't want you to think I think I'm a gifted writer, but when I do tap into it, it's kind of a groovy thing. So I'm going to just hearing all that you share, you're all so already so accomplished to not engage in that spirit would be shortchanging yourself. So without the idea that you have to produce something, just experiment with that and see how try that on. I have found it as of late to be one of the most joyful parts of right now. I've got lots of pressures in my life, personal and professional, and not all of them are bad, but just all of them together are too much. And this playful commitment for creativity to me is just a lovely break. And which is why I'm so inspired. And I will, my deadline is to kind of have everything done by June. But again, that's putting too much output or outcome. And I hope it rolls out that way, but I'm motivated to do so. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Stephen King, and you said also on writing, but not right next to each other. I don't know if you guys have read his book on writing.
I love his book.
It's like a drug. Like it's so
I listened to that.
amazing.
I listened to him narrate that.
Oh, did you?
Like
That's
you were saying before, I read the book, but I read it with him reading it. And unlike a lot of authors who shouldn't, like Toni Morrison, I never liked her reading her books. I love her books, but I don't like her voice. She's passed. But Stephen King, it's like you've invited a friend over for a beer.
And I don't read his other stuff. But I read that. What is the book called? On Writing. Oh, On Writing. Yeah.
I don't like all Stephen King book, but I like some of his. I don't like his like Cujo. Don't like that stuff. But some of his early books that are more short stories aren't so scary. But golly, I love On Writing. It's the same thing as Julia Cameron's thing, The Creative Way. It talks about the process, and they seem very humble servants of their craft, and it makes you like them. Makes me like him. I'd like to go hang with him.
Talk about downloading yesterday. There was a book called Revealing Heaven. It was about a young woman and she claims it's not fiction. Take for what you will, but she had the privilege of visiting heaven and getting a tour. And one of the things she says is, it's like, after a while, I realized I was listening to music, and the music was snippets of like so many famous songs that I had heard growing up, and classical and rock, and just all sort of, every so often. And she said, well, why is there so much earth music here? And the angel's like, where do you think they got it from?
Oh, my gosh.
But just to add to that, I think why our work with entrepreneurs is so interesting is I think that that's who they are. Because I think they might not be musicians, they might not be painters, they might not be writers, but they're risking everything. They're sacrificing everything to start this business from scratch. And it comes from deep down inside them.
Yeah.
And why I'm writing about that as part of kind of the nucleus, not necessarily about that, but it's kind of involved in that, is that business owners will start off with that initial dream and concept, maybe have good cash flow, but then they find themselves, they've created something really cool, and they're like, well, how do I get out of this mess of 90% of my time, finances, sales, customer service, all those things that we could list. And how do I get back to that flow state, that part that they're really good at creating, to really expand on that and grow their business to the next level?
They're working on the business, sorry, they spend all their time working at the business,
In the
they
business.
lose track of working on the business.
Right.
Yes.
So, so business owners that have employed me are those that they want me to help them in their personal life, on the personal finances and marriages. And they're like, wait a minute, what you're talking about will apply to my business. So that's how I transitioned into the business space. And so Doug showed me his notebook outline and like, wait a minute, I need to have, I've got all these things bouncing around in my head. I need to put those down on paper. And it turned into my process, which has turned into about a 100-page book over the last 45 days. And I've rewritten it one time, and I'm kind of in the middle of rewriting it a second time. So it's interesting how it just kind of comes out of you. Because I'm using it as a calling card, because some of my business owners are like, I'd like to refer you to someone else, but I'm not sure of your experience. So being able to put that in written form and go, well, look, I counsel a lot of people, I've coached people, I've been in a lot of different situations, and I own my own business too. So being able to demonstrate the process of going from a stuck entrepreneur, stuck business to, working out their personal development issues, getting back to the core of who they are, to then put together a vision and then put together a business plan that gets them out of that stuck phase. We're in that self-managed business. So it's interesting how this just all kind of resonates with a lot of what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
One thing I would mention is it's very easy to get into a trap of editing. There's a phrase of like, all writing is rewriting, and I appreciate that because, one day you write it, and the next day you read it back, it's like, it burns.
Right.
However, and this I've been able to apply to my own life, which is the question you have to ask yourself is, are you making it better or are you just making it different? Because you can rework a sentence 50 different ways. It's still the same basic thought. So I don't, at some point, you just have to say, you know what? This is good. This is good. No, it's not. No, trust yourself. It's good. It's good.
Well, I feel like in this process, I'm carving away. It's kind of like the sculptor.
Yeah.
It's not just rewording it to make it because you have a conversation. It's like, I need to address. It's more, the title has changed, the structure, the whole sense has changed. So I feel like I'm closer to what it's, closer to something that resembles.
Carve away everything. It doesn't look like Michelangelo.
Right. That's kind of, yeah. Carve away to get, find what's inside that stone. So yeah, the same approach. So.
Was 100 pages your goal, or you're just like?
Originally, it was 60 pages because the research, they say if you're gonna write a 300-page book, that just takes you forever to get done. But most nonfiction books, they only read about 20% of a 300-page nonfiction book, but they'll read 80% of a 100-page book.
Yeah.
So my goal is to write 100 pages. I've written 100 pages. Now it's just carving it away. So,
and you're exactly right. Even reading that one, subtle art of not giving a darn, after I want to say it was like 140
You're
pages.
done.
But after 80 pages, I'm like, I get it. Like, okay, you're saying the same
Exactly.
thing. I appreciate it. I guess you needed the content. Got one or two more
Right.
good stories, but I had done.
Then you skip through it, make sure I'm not missing anything on the other
Yeah.
chapters. Here you go.
I feel like nonfiction books like are more like, you know, they take more of your brain, you're thinking about it. Whereas like if you're reading a fictional book, like maybe you're imagining the scene, and you're going along with the story, and it's a little more relaxing. So a shorter book, when I get through it, I'm like, oh, all right, I accomplished something, I learned something, like I
Yeah.
got the concepts. But like in the middle of those longer books, I'll just put it down for a while and be like, I'm gonna come back to it.
Right.
I gotta think about all that for a little bit, and sometimes I don't go back to it.
Yeah, I'll probably cap the nonfiction book at 100 pages, and I'm like 70 pages in now. Because I just don't think anyone gives a crap about listening to me for more than 101 pages.
Confirmation.
But the fiction book, that one's a little different.
Yeah.
And going back to the process, I've done 2 books and a screenplay. The first book I did, I had the whole thing sort of laid out for me. Like I can't say I had a dream, but somewhere in there, I'm like, I know this character, I know the other characters, I know where we're starting, and I know where we're gonna finish.
Mhm.
And now it's just a matter of how many twists and turns can I weave into this sucker to keep people interested.
Yeah.
This one I'm writing now, though, I don't know where we're gonna really, like, I think I just figured out where we're gonna end up. I got
That's
45 pages into it, and I'm like, I can't wait to see what happens next.
Yeah,
What are they
exactly.
gonna, like, I've never written like that before. The screenplay I did, I knew exactly where it was gonna go, but this one, I'm like, I'm having fun reading what I'm, even though it kind of sucks, because first drafts always do. But I'm like, yeah, this is kind of, so I just sat down like last night and started jotting down. I'm like, ooh, I should probably know where this goes now that I'm on page 50. Why this? Oh, because that. And why that? Well, why are they after this person? Oh, because. So now I'm gonna start writing with the end in order. And by the way, sometimes it's not even in not writing in the chapter. You might not write in the chapter, like you're not gonna start, when I was born at a very young age to a long line of parents. You don't have to start at the beginning. I wrote a scene that like had me like, I'm tearing up. I'm having to get like, sorry, too much. I had to get paper towels to put, because I'm sweating as I'm writing, I'm just so into it. And it was like 6 pages of so good. I can't use it. Like I don't know where it's gonna fit,
Mhm.
but I got it. It's
Mhm.
there, it's ready. Hopefully it'll be this novel. If not, then the next one. But
Yeah,
sometimes you'll just get an idea, you get that flow, download it.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you say that, because most of my stories are lyrics. So all of my stories are very short, but like I'll write I have some stuff written, like, I don't know, a poem kind of, I guess. But like, I'm just waiting for the right piece of music to come along before I use it. And like, every time I get like a new piece of music or whatever I'm working on, I'll flip through it. I was like, is this your moment to shine? Oh, no, this one is not for you. Sorry, you still have to wait. And I just have this whole notebook of stuff that's just waiting.
Now, do you play also?
I play a little guitar, a little piano, enough to just communicate what I want.
Okay, no, that's awesome.
But you've been a
But she
vocalist
sings.
and
Oh,
and
yeah,
rock
yeah.
band.
I've been singing.
That's a
since
whole
I was
craft,
a kid.
yeah. I'm a great lover of music. I was a radio DJ in the 80s. Mom always said I had a great face for radio. But it was like alternative music and stuff. But I haven't really heard much that I've liked in this century, but open to the idea, I'm like, you kids don't know music. Red Hot Chili Peppers, that was music.
There's been no good music since the 1970s.
I know.
I hate when people say that, for some reason, because you have to.
60s actually with the
Yeah.
best music.
I agree with that, but at the same time, I think you just have to search
You do.
harder.
Mm.
And I'll get ideas from my son or watch a movie and it's like, wait a minute, what is that? I'll listen to it.
Yeah, it's interesting you guys
I
are
get-
talking
I
about
get a
this, because
clout.
in the music scene, we're talking about how do we make it easier for fans to get music, because
Yep.
you go to Spotify and they're like, ooh, you like this, you like this, you like this, you like this, and you get put in a box.
Yeah.
Well, what if you want to hear something that's not what I normally listen
Yeah.
to?
Mhm.
There's nothing really structured like that, so we're working on it.
No, it's good.
In the, you're talking about how sometimes a novel will unfold. It reminds me of the book, Alex and Emma. And some people don't like that movie, but I just love it because it starts off in one direction, and this is where you think it's going, and then all of a sudden, and it's a guy who's dictating to a stenographer, and so, and all of a sudden the movie goes off in a different direction, and then Emma will say something, and all of a sudden it'll shift. You know, she's no longer German, now she's Dutch. And all of a sudden, the whole movie just takes off in a different direction, so
Interesting.
I love that. A lot of people don't, I'm sure that a lot of
Did
that.
you like the movie? Did you like the movie, was it titled Will Ferrell, was it Stranger Than Fiction?
Stranger Than Fiction,
Yeah.
yeah.
Did you like that movie?
Don't know that movie.
It's good, but it's also uncomfortable.
It's a really, I mean, I'm not a big Will Ferrell fan.
I was just gonna say, I will watch it for that reason.
Right.
Because I've heard about it, but I also am not a big fan of Will
I'm not
Ferrell.
either.
Emma
It
Thompson
drives
is
me
in it.
nuts. It's a really good movie.
It is really sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because the author's dictating, is kind of narrating his life, and he starts
Yeah.
hearing voices.
Oh,
It's
interesting.
fascinating.
Okay.
I don't know how they pull it off, but they
I
do.
may have to-
And he brings a baker flowers instead of flowers. He brings her different kinds of flour. It's so
Oh,
romantic.
Yeah.
And he's an IRS auditor.
Okay, all right, I'll have to get into that one. The, something that Sal said earlier too was having the discipline to just do it a little, you know, like exercise. So I've been planking 3 years now, 4, I don't know how many years. And that's a 5-minute plank. So I could just as well I could just in addition to add into my my menu of things I do every morning, I could do 5 minutes of writing. And if I did 5 minutes, then I'll do 15. Most time, but at least do 5 minutes. I think will get me going back into it. So,
I know Stephen King talks about not watching TV as a way that he would write. It's just
Yeah.
he doesn't watch TV.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm willing to do that.
yeah, I've
So
given
when
up
you're a
TV
mom,
for a
you're
year.
exhausted.
I know I need to turn my brain off.
Yeah, I've turned off TV for a year now, and unless I'm with somebody. And so it saves a lot of time.
I don't watch TV.
Yeah,
I just have too much.
right,
No,
right,
not so much of it.
yeah.
I like some stuff, but I've noticed my TV time has gone down. And I don't know which one. Am I writing more because I'm not watching TV, or am I
Right.
not watching TV because I'm
Yeah.
writing?
Yeah, good point.
So, but
Yeah, we don't have like all the channels. All we have are like Amazon Prime
Yeah,
and Paramount. So if we can't find anything to watch, we just kind of turn it off.
right, right.
And
I
I'm
like
not,
that way better anyway. You can be
Yeah.
way more intentional about what you're watching.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, oh, well, tonight we feel like a horror movie.
You just have to
or
watch the
tonight-
social media.
yeah, you're not flipping channels.
Yeah.
You're not,
Are you alternating social media, which I think I'm doing instead of watching
Yeah,
TV?
sure.
Purely-
Yes.
Yeah.
what is it, doom scrolling?
Yeah.
And you're sitting on Instagram for half an hour and it's
Yeah.
like, wow, where did that happen?
You're not
Yeah.
watching TV,
Yeah.
but you're, scrolling through.
One more. Just wait, wait, just
You're like, oh, it'll be a funny one. No, a recipe. No.
I'm really interested in knowing, because I'm just getting into this, what is the plan for publishing and marketing? How do you guys do that, or where do you look? I really want to get into that question before we leave for today, because I have no idea.
Mhm. Okay,
Well, I gotta go.
the self-digital marketing. I mean, is that another,
Because there is like,
would that be a topic for next time we meet, or, cause that,
I
is that a
think
long?
we've got 20 minutes here,
Okay.
so let's go ahead and see what ideas you have on.
So I worked at a bookstore actually before
Okay.
this, and there, they would occasionally take self-published books. And they're like, okay, we'll put it out. You really have to get your own, like drum up your own
Mhm.
interest, and then, they give a percentage to the writer. But in order to really have your book be sold and stuff, they say, you have to have have it published, and then have an editor, and have an agent to help you find that publishing company. There's more and more, I think, of these like medium-sized publishers medium to small that that are looking, and you can go online, they'll be looking for writers of certain topics, and then you have to just start like sending them your stuff. But I think you have to have most of it, like, pretty, unless you're an established author, most of it like written already. So to me, that's where I'm like, okay, I gotta finish writing before I can. But every once in a while, it's fun to look up like the publisher of a book you like, or a book that's similar to the one that you want to publish. And then you can go online and find places where they'll say like, taking new writers in these topics, and they'll be, very specific.
Writer's Digest also has a quarter, I think it's a monthly magazine. And
Okay.
they will, once a year, they will put out a list of genres, and these are agents that don't hate people. And then you try your luck there. I'll say my experience with Billy Reynolds and High Pitched Hum was, he got me into pretty much every bookstore in Jacksonville, from here down to Gainesville, and then Fernandina Beach, and as far north as Savannah. But you had to do book signings like all the freaking time, every other weekend. I think the best book signing I did was at the Barnes and Noble in the town center. And I sold 50 copies, and they kept me stocked for a while. But after a while, they're like, it's over. So that was it. So, and that's why I didn't do the second book with him, because I'm like, I need to be at home more, and I just don't have that. I had my website, I had a little newsletter for the, Dontoids or whatever, and a loyal, fan base, but I couldn't ever really crack, I was a regional success, but I had 3,000 copies that were printed, and I've got like 400 in one of my closets. I'm like, well, that's $4,000, $10. I'm not throwing those out. But
What about the self-publishing, marketing, all those kinds of things, they're having
and it's the same caveat.
Audible, all those things.
You've got to be prepared to market, because it's not like when Stephen King, oh, we found this great new author,
Right.
and now we're going to promote the crap out of him. Yeah, maybe, but you could also go, be a basketball player in the NBA and get a chance
Well, and
about equal.
established authors hustle to do book signings.
Yeah.
With that is, I think, one of the most demoralizing things for me to see, is that these people who've written tons of books, they're great books, they're well known, are still going to bookstores and like selling their own stuff.
Yeah.
They're still like peddling their own writing.
And I had 2 book signings where I was there for 3 hours. I sold nothing.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, that's kind of a ooh.
But
fun.
that's big people, like,
Yeah.
it's just,
But there's online marketing, there's
Yeah.
classes, there's these mind.
There
there's
are.
all these other things you.
And I'm trying to remember, there was a local author, oh no, I can't remember his name, but I say local, within like 100 miles of Jacksonville. His first novel was picked up, he got a modest amount of money, he sunk all of it into marketing. Sold a second book, sunk all of that into marketing, his third book was a bestseller. So, but the money, like Sal said, the money on the first and second ones, there's just nothing there. It's minimum wage until the third one broke.
Yeah, and just remember that the best-selling author is not the best author, it's the best-selling author, and so you gotta be the one that's pushing it out there.
Well, I've had this idea for a while, and I would, talk to people about it, and, I talked to somebody, I think 3 years ago, and she was, published through an independent, company, and she talked to them, and they reached out to me, and they wanted to also publish me. They were called Balboa Press. I don't know if anyone had heard of them. And what are they called? No, maybe they're called something else. But anyway, but the thing was that they were interested in publishing my book, but they were like on a deadlines, and I wasn't ready to do that.
Yeah.
That wasn't called Bell. That was something else. But anyway, but they kept calling and calling and calling. I just kept ignoring them because I wasn't ready to and they were, I think, I don't know, maybe they had a self-publishing division, but it was more of like their self-publishing division. And it was, they would market it and stuff. And I think they would help you with marketing. well, I can't remember what the name of it, but they would, and I'll find the name if anyone is interested.
Mhm.
But they would help you with marketing and do all of that. But again, it was very much their deadline kind of driven thing, and I just wasn't ready, be able to meet it. So I ended up, just really, and they keep kind of calling now, every now and then. But that is something, if you guys are able to meet their deadline, I think though they were looking, I mean, they were looking at me, or they were interested in me because it was more, they were looking for more of that like self-development
Mhm.
niche. I don't know if they're looking for other niches, I'm not sure. But that's why they were really interested in my story. But I just wasn't sure if anybody had a similar, uh, interaction with a company like that, and whether or not they thought it was good or bad, or what have you, or how much, what you guys thought of that.
Mhm. And I
So I
know you, go ahead.
a few thoughts about that. So first of all, the publishing world has changed dramatically. It's not just because of, independent bookstores, especially during the pandemic. So few of them have survived because the whole world changed during the pandemic. It's because the whole way that content is published, any creative content, whether we were just talking how we don't watch TV anymore. I've spent I spent 35 years, almost 40 years in the media world, in the electronic media world, and I can tell you it's a completely different game. So think about what we're talking about here. You mentioned deadlines. You mentioned we talked a little bit about marketing. When you bring an idea to a publishing company, you're actually asking them to bear the risk of your creative content in being a profitable success for them. So, the first few, it's really, really rare, and it has been for a long time, but I would say even in the past 15 years, maybe even 20 years, for somebody to have a manuscript that's shopped around by an unknown author, and then boom, they get picked, and then they get published, and then the company throws a lot of marketing dollars to spread that book around bookstores across America, or to get that person on, National Public Radio or wherever it is that they can talk about their books. It hasn't happened that way for a long time, and it's not going to happen probably to any of us, no matter what amazing books we have. It's going to happen more like what we started to talk about a few minutes ago, and that is you have to show the chutzpah, whether it's in talking into work circles, civic groups, book signings are one thing, but it's someone mentioned a book as a calling card. If you're out speaking, gifting it to people, maybe even sending it to 25 of your closest associates and getting some feedback on it, which would allow you then through other channels like LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram to do some of your own marketing. One of my dad's most successful authors was a man by the name of Vince Flynn. He actually died really young of testicular cancer, but if you're ever in an airport bookstore, you'll see Vince Flynn's books, and they're usually having to do with terrorists and, the names of a book I just pulled up here. Order to Kill, Enemy of the State, The Red War, Code Red, Denied Access. So there's always usually some sort of terrorist overthrow of the government, and then the central character, saves the day. It's usually Vince Flynn was actually a little bit of a in real life conspiracy theorist, but anyways, talented as he was, his first 2 or 3 books were self-published, and he hustled. He was passionate. He took the risk. And it wasn't so much monetarily, it was the passion that he had for pushing out his book. If you're not passionate about your book and believe in it, I can guarantee you there's no there's no traditional royalty right publisher that's gonna do it for you. But if you're passionate, like Vince was, I mean, he was almost like crazy about it. He went on to be extremely successful, and had he not died in his early 60s, I'm sure more people would know of him. He's a certain genre of books, but he was very successful in it. And just because it's fun to share, my dad was such a mentor to him that in his fourth book, which was his first, I don't know who his author is or who his publisher is now, but Transfer of Power, he wrote my dad in as a character. And I'm just telling you, my dad saved the president. So in case you're wondering, yep, it was my dad that saved the day. That was his first royalty publishing situation where he had enough of a following that then the traditional publisher got behind it and took it from there. So you kind of have to prove that you're worth taking a risk on, because in the end, publishers have a very small margin and it's a business. And nowadays, all you really need is I can't find a book here, but the Library of Congress number in the front of it. And you can be, you don't have to be in a bookstore. You can be in a book warehouse, which is a lot cheaper, and you retain more of the rights of it. You don't have to have 3,000 books that you're distributing through regional bookstores. You can, a fulfillment center will store your books and maybe even order it on demand. So let's say you only have, 300 copies, and suddenly the orders start coming in and you start successfully. Well, then you can, keep the pipeline going, and you don't have to have a full inventory and be your own business person. So self-publishing doesn't have to be self-publishing. You could work with an independent, publisher. You can working, as was mentioned, smaller publishers are always eager they have workshops, they're eager to get content. But just shopping around transcripts, chances are they won't read it because they don't want the liability or be accused of stealing it. So they won't even read it. They'll send it back to you unopened. So unless you start showing up at some of these writers' workshops and whatnot, chances are you're not going to be in that trusted circle. It's been rare, and it's becoming increasingly more rare that someone would say, hey, you, that wonderful author over there, sitting in the coffee shop, toiling away. Yep, that's it. I want you. It just doesn't happen that way very much. It probably does occasionally, but you'd probably have to have some other connection. You'd have to be a movie star or a former president or somebody that already has name recognition for a company to want an athlete, let's say.
My issue with Balboa was, with the self-publishing, you have to put up the front money and costs, right? You have to pick a package depending on the marketing and editing.
That's correct.
You have to pay them a certain amount, and it's just like, well, how legitimate is this? Is this going to work? Is this not going to work? I mean, that's the issue, is you just don't know. And I just didn't know when they reached out to me, whatever it was 4 years ago, is this something that I'm willing to spend, and what's, the packages. I mean, I'm just looking at them right now because I actually found the email, back then it was from anywhere from, 1,700 to, 18,000, right? So it's depending on the amount of, like they will do a bookstore pitch campaign, the $18,000 one, author advantage royalty program, unlimited interior, and just whatever, all the marketing and I guess the editing and everything that goes with it. Social media announcements, video and podcast interview, it just depends on the amount of marketing or whatever that you're willing to do. But it's just like, how legitimate is it? And are you, willing to, can you count on that or not, that they're actually going to do it?
That's why you have to do your homework on it. I was going to say that those numbers are spot on. ten to $20,000 for your first book. And it doesn't have to be all at once. And there's different ways that you can do it, but it depends on how much risk you're willing to take with the publishing firm. And even the big, honestly, if you look at the big like Simon and Schuster and stuff, they don't even work with regional authors very much anymore. They're only going to put their money behind the ones that they know are going to make them profit. So the smaller publishers are going to ask you to lean in on the risk, and usually that's around the marketing. They're more helpful in
Yeah,
general, their resources, but even print and paper nowadays is expensive. So some people are going straight to ebooks or Audible books, and it's because the overhead is less, but the marketing is still very, very expensive. And realistically,
I'm sorry. Are you familiar with some of the free publishing sites? Like there's digital to draft and,
Yeah.
pros and cons and some of the different options in that world?
yeah, I would say that to me feels a little sketchier. The established independent publishers that have a track record, that have a catalog of bona fide, legitimate authors, and that maybe they've got more than one book. The organizations that have a lot of authors that have only published once, that to me is a sign of, a company that's just trying to take your money and make you feel great, and you get enough books to pass them out to your friends and family, and you can say you're an author. That's not necessarily a bad thing, because being an author is a calling card. But if you are really, really serious about becoming a published author, from my humble perspective, you want to deal with a publishing firm that's been in business 10 or more years and has a catalog of established authors that have good reputation. They might have a forte in, let's say, self-help or religious books or children's books or cookbooks or do-it-yourself books. So they kind of have their niche, because the marketing machines are easier for them. And then in terms of public relations and other services that they can offer, they're more generous in that regard. But I would never give my content at all to some unknown, bot that's just going to take my content and spit it out in the internet. Because in the world of artificial intelligence down the road, again, you want to keep that copyright, that ownership of that original content is something you just don't want to leverage away at any cost. Free, you get what you pay for with the free.
Yeah. Well, the ones I researched, you still own your content, you still control it all. But it's again, I'm just opening the door to all these different options.
And it's so funny because that whole world is like this, the next phase after finishing. There's writing, editing, shopping,
Mhm.
all of those huge parts of it. So
Yeah.
it's really not a simple, straightforward task.
Mhm.
No,
And Sal, what you're saying is not that they may do a poor job with it, but that they may actually steal it and put it
Well,
out.
they may go out of business and then nobody's protecting it. Then it's there's nobody ethically that's on your side. That's
Right.
that's like being a lawyer. They're protecting they should be a partner to you. You're just like you would have a partner in any other process. And I'm trying to think, a personal trainer or a who in your life do you trust? And your publisher should be they make you better. You're talking about chiseling the words. They should help you with editing. They might even, help you understand marketing better and they may more objectively be able to market. I think sometimes when you fall in love with your own content, it's hard to be critical. It's hard to be objective about something you love. You might be able to do that well with someone else, but it might be hard. And they're like a coach, a friend, a mentor, an expert. They make your product better. And if that is not your relationship, You don't want to give them the greedy world. And I know this because I've sat on both sides of the table. Content is king right now. That's why we're turning off TV. That's why we're turning off radio, because there's 1,000 channels and there's nothing to watch. It's all the same gobbledygook. And the reason why reality TV and TED Talks and Facebook have become so ubiquitous is because producing quality content is hard. So you
Well, and then you were saying that, you know, it's hard to have an editor or publisher or somebody change what you're working on and stuff. And it's, I know they call it like killing your baby. It's like
Kill your darlings.
kill your darlings. But yeah, that's just, you never want to have to do that.
Well, I want to say something about copyright, okay? Copyright as an attorney, right? So even if you give your, like, you have somebody else helping you and they put your content, let's say on the website, or they're taking pictures, and they say, yes, you know, these pictures are not quote unquote stolen, right? These pictures, we paid for them, these are you know, and they put them on your, this just happened to one of my clients recently. There's firms out there that will scour through, you know, anything that's on, even on your website, or let's say in your book, or if it's being marketed, you know, and they will actually, send you a letter asking, you know, for demands and what have you. And even if you say, well, I didn't do it, you know, I put it, you know, I had a website designer do it, you know, that's their liability. They can still go after you, right? That recently happened to one of my clients.
Wow.
She farmed it out to the third party website developer to develop her website. Apparently the website developer put a picture of just like a gavel on her website, and apparently it wasn't properly, she apparently stole it or something, or she said she didn't, you know, she said it wasn't from a proper database, that she paid for it, but it obviously wasn't because it was registered and all of that, and they didn't get, and now they're coming after my client for it, and they have every right under copyright law to do that. We can mitigate liability, and now we have to go after the website developer for it as a third party. But again, those are the kind of things that you don't necessarily want to get into, even if you have your content out there with the kind of companies that I think Sal is referring to. You think, well, it doesn't matter because now I have a company and I can hide behind them. Well, legally, you really can't. If you go with somebody like Balboa, referring to Balboa, or you know, an established company, you know, they will, you know, you can be more assured, I guess, that they're doing everything correctly, and they'll have, you know, liability insurance and things of that nature that you can go after. This website developer that we're now going to have to go after, I don't think does. And these copyright claims, we're not talking pennies. We're talking up to $30,000-$40,000, and they have a right to attorney's fees as well. So we're talking about some serious money potentially.
We may have to do a discussion related to copyright and stuff, especially with using other coaches' ideas, because that's such a big topic. And we also are going to talk about AI in the future, which may touch on some of those things. It is just after 1:30, which is when we like to end. Next month, we're meeting March 3rd, and we're talking about tips for survival as a solopreneur. So kind of make it when it's just you. And does anybody have any announcements before we end? Anything going on in your world that everybody should know about? Also, if you ever have announcements of events and stuff, we sometimes add those to the email. So please feel free to send those to us. We were just sharing about Heidi's event. How did that go Friday?
It went really good. I was super excited because we like played around with like those different event groups. I don't remember which one Joanna used. It was one I hadn't heard of before. And then we did Meetup. And then we had like the link on the website. So we were advertising the website and had a couple sales on there. And she was advertising her thing and she had a couple sales on there. But we had one person show up that nobody knew. She's just like, it's my New Year's resolution to just show up to new things. So I found you on Meetup and here I am. And I'm like, yeah.
Nice.
So Otherwise, everything else went really good. The sound was good, the video was good. We'll have some video from it, so.
Well, thanks everybody for sharing your journeys in writing. Everybody in different places, and I think it's gonna be exciting to see what happens next.
It's been a good year.
Yeah.
This was a joy. I have to scoot to another meeting, but it was nice meeting you. I look forward to another conversation down the road. Good luck,
Thank you for
everybody.
coming,
Nice
Seth.
meeting you, Sal.
Good. Well, thanks you all for coming. This is great.
Yeah.
Good, interesting conversation.
Always